this is a party that doesn't like criticism, and led by a man who himself has proved that he is very, very thin-skinned. I mean, look at the fact that Nigel Farage didn't bother to turn out to the election count for the election that he called, that he won, because he didn't like the idea that someone might ask him a slightly embarrassing question. So for all they talk about, you know, the importance of free speech and being robust and woke lefty snowflakes on the other side, they don't like criticism when it's doled out to them. And if you want to be high profile in politics, you have to be able to take that.
Rachel, what are you thinking about this evening?
Well, Terry went for, you know, a blast from the past in the form of Sue Gray, and I have gone for a blast from the past for this show in the form of Tim Montgomery, who used to be my Pinar and Friends, Calum and Friends sparring partner for about 2 years. We were paired up. It started off when he was still a Conservative, and then after his switch to Reform, and obviously a couple of days ago he was suspended from Reform for comments being critical of the leadership and some of the senior figures in that. And I find this really fascinating because I know Tim quite well, and I got to know him very well doing this show. And, you know, it's worth saying we come from complete opposite ends of the political spectrum. You know, pick an issue and you can be pretty sure that, you know, me and Tim will be coming at it from opposite ends. But I always found him thoughtful, nuanced, sometimes persuasive, sometimes, you know, in some issues less persuasive, but always interested in what he had to say. And there were instances where he was talking about reform policy that I adamantly disagreed with, and he was able to communicate it in a way that made me think, okay, I still don't necessarily agree with that, but I can kind of understand where that's coming from. And if you think about the fact that Reform's aim a year ago was not to just talk to their base, but to try and reach out to disaffected Conservatives, disaffected voters from across the political spectrum who didn't want to be put off by the more, you know, radical right-wing elements, but were looking for something a bit different and a bit serious. You needed people like Tim who could make the case and speak to people like that. And he was also, from the beginning, openly critical of things that Nigel Farage was doing, literally from the day that he joined. And he said, I think on this programme, that he'd had a conversation with Nigel Farage where he said, you know, if I join, I will be critical, in the same way that he has been critical of the Conservative Party for decades. So I think the fact that Reform doesn't seem able to handle that criticism does not suggest it is a party that is serious about governing or serious about in any way broadening its appeal beyond the base it already has. I think it's very sad.
It's interesting too, because he is reasonably high profile as a was a Reform member, I suppose, at this point. But he's not an MP. It's interesting to discipline a member of the party in this way, albeit a high-profile member of the party.
Yes, this is not someone who is an elected figure. He's not a councillor. He's not a parliamentary candidate. You know, and you would think that there are different sets of rules. You can't imagine that you can police every single Reform member. But you know, people seem to have come for Tim Montgomery precisely because he's got, you know, a media platform and is quite well known. And I think it's interesting that a lot of this seems to be conducted through the medium of X. And, you know, goodness only knows if that's what people are saying in public, what they are saying in private. And just in the last little while, Matt Goodwin, who was of course the party's candidate in Gorton and Denton, has really just, you know, put a screed out laying into Tim Montgomery, defending Zia Yusuf, who Tim Montgomery had criticised, and really sort of exposing this kind of divide between, as he sees it, people who've come from the Conservative Party and very critical of people who are former Conservatives, and people that Matt Goodwin sees himself as like sort of Reform true believers, if you like. And so I think that is the line of argument that is clearly going on here.
Is that always going to be an issue? Is that what this is exposing? Is the former Conservatives versus the Reform UK diehards?
I think there are two issues that it exposes. One of them is definitely that, and one of the reasons I believe that there is tension between Zia Yusuf and Tim Montgomery is Tim Montgomery was instrumental in bringing over Robert Jenrick from the Conservatives to Reform, and Zia Yusuf, I think, hates the fact that senior former Conservative figures now have high-profile roles in Reform, and that is a tension. You know, how many quote-unquote failed Conservative former ministers can this party absorb and still be the insurgent radical something new? But I think the other thing is this is a party that doesn't like criticism, and led by a man who himself has proved that he is very, very thin-skinned. I mean, look at the fact that Nigel Farage didn't bother to turn out to the election count for the election that he called, that he won, because he didn't like the idea that someone might ask him a slightly embarrassing question. So for all they talk about, the importance of free speech and being robust and woke lefty snowflakes on the other side, they don't like criticism when it's doled out to them. And if you want to be high profile in politics, you have to be able to take that.
Yeah. What then does this say about Reform UK's party conference, and the significance of it? Because it's only a couple of weeks away. They're going early in comparison to the sort of mainstream parties, I suppose. Is it a bit of a make or break moment that's building for Reform UK, given the difficulties reported in the Sunday Times and indeed the Times around their finances, gifts, donations? Yes, there's been a by-election. Investigations continue by the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner. Is it make or break at this conference, do you think?
I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Nigel Farage handles it, because, as you were saying, he is quite used to people, looking up to him. He's got two jobs. One is to sort of either come out fighting and say, look, the people of Clacton have spoken and I'm going to put all of this behind me and I don't care what the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner says, or words to that effect. But he also needs to try to knock people's heads together in terms of having these two rival camps in the party going at each other, because otherwise it's going to be an absolute bun fight for journalists in particular, because everyone will be chasing around, is Tim Montgomery allowed to go? Who's seen Zia Youssef lately? Those kind of party conference frenzies that people get into, and unless you get a tight grip on that, it will expose if there is a big problem here.
Yeah, Rachel?
Yeah, and I think the expectations are really high, because last year the conference, what people said about it is it was a bit chaotic, but full of energy. They'd never seen such enthusiasm and energy from members. It was more like a rally than a normal political conference. You had Nigel Farage coming on stage in a JCB tractor.
That's right.
Yeah. It was kind of extravaganza, showbiz.
Yeah.
And in the last year, they have shown that they are having the same problems that all parties have when they try and grow and they have factions. And also, they're not a party in the same constitutional senses as others that are kind of where the members get a say. I mean, they know this. They get a paper say, but in general, it's a one-man band. It's what Nigel says goes, and it'll be really interesting to see just what the atmosphere is like, and if that level of enthusiasm that spelled such high expectations last year can be maintained. My guess is probably not.
Full coverage of party conference season in the weeks and months ahead. Where do we?
That time already?
Almost. We're not far away from it.
The nights are drawing in.
Yeah, that's right. I said that last night. Honestly, yes.
Can't say that. I've got a garden party coming up in a week.
Do you? So we have our annual funeral for rosé season soon in our garden, where we drink rosé for the last time of the summer. That usually coincides with party conference season. Funnily enough, there we are. Right, lots to come with. There's an insight into my life. Lots to come with Rachel and Terry over the next 45 minutes or so.